Mavs fans, you finally got your wish. After the historic trade sending Luka-Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers, Nico Harrison said that time will tell if I'm right. And 9 months later, time ran out. The Dallas Mavericks finally did it. They fired the much maligned, heavily scrutinized GM Nico Harrison less than a year after the trade that sent shockwaves across the NBA. So how did we get here? We have to rewind back to 2021. The Mavs make some changes across their entire organization after back-to-back first-round exits. They parted ways with longtime head coach Rick Carlisle and Donnie Nelson, the GM. They bring in Jason Kidd, who helped bring the Mavs a title as a player back in 2011, and bring in a former executive from Nike known as Nico Harrison. At the time, Nico had no experience managing an NBA roster, but built good relationships during his time at Nike with several players. Although his biggest blemish was botching the pitch to Steph Curry, where he addressed him as Seth by accident and also pulled up the wrong presentation for Kevin Durant. This led to Steph's eventual partnership with Under Armour. In his first season as Mavs GM, the Mavs went on to win their first playoff series in over a decade and made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals, losing to the eventual NBA champion Golden State Warriors. The following offseason, we saw Nico's first big mistake as he failed to lock up budding star Jalen Brunson. As Nico Harrison had an opportunity on multiple occasions to re-sign Brunson for a cheap 4-year, $55 million deal, instead decided to play the waiting game and eventually got priced out by the New York Knicks on a 4-year, $104 million deal where the Mavs decided not to match. Brunson would go on to become a superstar, leading the Knicks back to relevancy and the Eastern Conference Finals last season. In 2023, with the Mavs sputtering and Luka just losing his running mate, Nico had to make a change, and he got creative by making a clever pivot to bring in Kyrie Irving from the Brooklyn Nets. At the time, Kyrie Irving was a social pariah and needed a change of scenery. While their initial pairing took time to gel, Luka and Kyrie were cooking together. Nico would strike gold again, acquiring PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford at the deadline to build a strong defense and bolster their perimeter shooting. The Mavs would go on for a run of the ages, defeating an old foe in the LA Clippers, upsetting the West top-seeded OKC Thunder, and later the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Western Conference Finals. They went up against a stacked Celtics team in the 2024 NBA Finals, but despite the disappointing end to their season, they knew that they were a team on the rise, and ownership rewarded Nico with a multi-year extension. But this is when the wheels fell off. Just 1 week before the Super Bowl, Nico Harrison executed the blockbuster trade of the century, sending Luka-Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round draft pick. The move left NBA fans stunned all over the entire world. Doncic has just bought a house for his family and wanted to be a Maverick for life, as he built a tight bond with Mavs legend Dirk Nowitzki. But in a blink of an eye, the Mavs sent their franchise player and beloved superstar to LA. Right after the news broke, Mavs fans began rioting outside American Airlines Arena, and thus beginning the now infamous Fire Nico chants. The trade was unfathomable, like someone punched Mavs fans in the stomach, as now they have to embrace a nightmare that wouldn't be ending anytime soon. The return for Luka was just baffling. AD and Max Christie are nice players, don't get me wrong, especially with Anthony Davis, but how do you let the Lakers get away with keeping Austin Reeves? Austin Reeves has become an ascending player and became a full-time starter for the Lakers in 2023. If I'm Nico Harrison and I'm making a call to Rob Pelinka, the first thing I'm doing after requesting for Anthony Davis is I'm asking for Austin Reeves. And if Rob Pelinka says no deal, no dice, well, thank you, have a nice day, click, and then you regroup. But instead, they settle for Max Christie alongside Anthony Davis, and this is already looking like a really bad trade. And then when you talk about the draft capital that the Lakers sent in return, it was just a 2029 first-round draft pick. Didn't Nico realize that Luka is just now beginning his prime as he turned 26 earlier this year? He's already been to 5 All-Star games. and been a 5-time All-NBA player, and single-handedly dragged the Mavs to the 2024 Western Conference Finals and later the NBA Finals in 2024. For reference, the McCall Bridges trade from Brooklyn to New York yielded 5 first-round draft picks and a pick swap. If you look at the trade as a whole, this is simply nowhere near the proper trade compensation for a player of Luka's caliber. The literal centerpiece of the trade in terms of from the Mavs perspective was Anthony Davis, a player who has earned a reputation of becoming an injury-prone player, as Charles Barkley famously nicknamed him Street Clothes. In his Mavs debut, we got the full Anthony Davis experience. We got an amazing first half littered with defensive tenacity with a few blocks, a putback dunk, and even splashed a three-pointer against the Houston Rockets. But in the second half, he re-aggravated his abdominal injury that he sustained earlier during his tenure with the Lakers and was out indefinitely. Since arriving in Dallas, AD has played in just 14 of 48 games, which is ironic because the premises of trading Luka Doncic, that Doncic wasn't a durable player. Meanwhile, Nico trades for Anthony Davis, a player who has missed 246 out of 1,012 possible games, which is the equivalent of nearly 3 full seasons or 25% of his career that he's missed due to injury. Did the Mavs really expect Davis to suddenly stay healthy at the age of 32 and also suddenly play 70 games? This is something that Davis has only done 3 times in his career. The other selling point for trading Luka was that he's been notoriously identified as a poor defender. With each year, there were noticeable differences in Luka's appearance, as there were rumors that he gained weight, as he was routinely beaten off the dribble, especially in the 2024 NBA Finals. Davis has been an elite defender, but never quite became a DPOY player that many pegged him to be early on in his career. And while this was a tough sell for Mavs governor Patrick Dumont, he eventually caved and the trade was done, as the Mavs changed their identity to becoming more of a defensive-minded team. 2 days later, the Mavs go in further by sending Quentin Grimes to the Philadelphia 76ers to get Caleb Martin and a couple second-round draft picks in return. This I dubbed as another miscalculation by Nico Harrison, as Grimes went on to average 22 points for the 76ers, and later, once the Sixers got their stars back into the lineup, he's still being a productive player at averaging 18 points a game and shooting over 40% from deep. Things would go from bad to worse, as Kyrie Irving would go down with a torn ACL and won't return at least until January of 2026. Despite all of these miscalculations, the Mavs were bailed out on the night of the NBA draft lottery. Despite just a 1.8% chance of winning the top overall pick, the Dallas Mavericks won the draft lottery and the right to acquire Duke phenom Cooper Flagg. Fast forward to the start of the 2025-2026 NBA season, and it's been an ugly start to say the least for the Dallas Mavericks. Despite lucking into the top overall pick to select Cooper Flagg, they've been bitten hard by the injury bug leading to their 3-9 start. AD came into camp 15 pounds overweight and has since injured his calf on top of already dealing with bilateral Achilles tendinopathy. Factoring in the injuries to Kyrie and AD, you might have thought that this would have given more reps to Cooper Flagg. But despite being a gifted generational talent, the Mavs had done everything in their power to ruin his chances to develop. Due to the Mavs' short-handed backcourt, Jason Kidd was forced to get creative and started Cooper Flagg at the point guard in 8 games already this season. And this has forced Cooper to play out of position compared to his more natural position at the 3 or the 4. And during this time where Cooper Flagg has been operating as a Mavs point guard, this has stunted his growth. And while let's remember, Flagg is the youngest player in the NBA at just 18 years, and to throw him into the most demanding position in basketball is just coaching malpractice. While he's done a good job being a ball handler and he can create at times, there's just a massive difference between a situational playmaker and running an entire NBA offense. As Tim McMahon said, "I think he's a good passer for a 6'9", 18-year-old forward, but he's not a good passer for an NBA point guard, certainly not right now. Through 12 games, Flagg has averaged 15 points per game, 7 rebounds, but only 3 assists per game, which aren't bad for a rookie at this point, but considering that the Mavs need a true point guard, this is simply not going to get it done. And to be honest, it just feels like there's an element of trying to rush Cooper Flagg into becoming a superstar just so Nico could justify the absurd trade of sending Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers. With the acquisition of Anthony Davis while also winning the NBA draft, Nico expected the Mavs to be a championship contender while still having the remnants of a roster built for Luka Doncic instead of matching the skill set of Cooper Flagg. Simply put, that's simply not how roster construction in the NBA works, and it's understandable that you can't prioritize one player over an entire team. But let's be honest, the ping pong balls had blessed the Mavericks, and instead being stuck behind aging stars, they have a chance to reset and build around Cooper Flagg. By the time Flagg actually develops into an all-NBA player, Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis will likely be on their last legs in the NBA, as the timeline will never seem to overlap. So far this season, the Mavs offense has no direction without a true point guard. They currently stand last in the league in offensive rating, last in the league in field goal percentage, 29th in three-point percentage, 28th in assists per game, 23rd in points in the paint, and 29th in offensive efficiency, while also averaging 106 points per game, which is dead last and over 10 points off the league average. If this doesn't say the Mavs have a historically bad defense, I don't know what else will. So why are the Mavs so bad? Well, there are so many things for the reasons I just listed with the Mavs, but trust me, there are plenty more, and I would have a list to fill up the entire screen. At the top of the list has to be their lack of three-point shooting. This is a team that simply doesn't have a reliable shooter outside of Max Christie. Ranking dead last in three-point percentage, their offense is the second worst behind the Indiana Pacers. This affects the spacing where Cooper Flagg operates. If they could only get a true point guard consistently into the lineup, his slow start might be actually accelerated. Just look at the numbers when Cooper Flagg has D'Lo or Brandon Williams on the floor compared to when they're off the floor. And due to this poor roster construction, Jason Kidd had to get creative. Running an NBA offense was never Cooper Flagg's role. Look at the other rookies like BJ Edgecombe or Con Knipple. The amount of shots that they make that are assisted versus unassisted is night and day. Let's also remember that Cooper Flagg is the youngest player in the NBA. He's just 18 years of age, and I truly believe that he will find his footing now that Nico Harrison is gone. Checking in on the other team on this trade, while Dallas is falling apart and circling the bottom of the Western Conference standings, the Los Angeles Lakers are right in the thick of the playoff mix at 8-4 as a top 4 team in a competitive Western Conference. Luka Doncic is averaging 35, 9-9 and is on an insane tear to start this season. We've already spoken about his improved defense and his all-round performance against the San Antonio Spurs last week. I find it funny that Nico traded Luka citing conditioning and injury concerns when Luka has already played more games than Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, and Derek Lively combined since that very trade. This move will haunt Mavs fans for years to come, and Luka Doncic is playing the best basketball of his career. He's been more efficient. He's been better on the defensive end. He's making his teammates better and also in the best shape since early on in his career. And these are all things that the Mavs front office, particularly Nico Harrison, said he couldn't do. The slow start so far to 2025 wasn't part of the plan for the Dallas Mavericks, as the original plan was to get Cooper Flagg up to speed quickly while AD leads the way and Kyrie is able to come into the mix just after the All-Star break for the stretch run, and the Mavs would be this playoff dark horse entering April. Instead, Dallas has been decimated across the roster, and it's not just AD. Kyrie Irving is still recovering from the torn ACL. We probably won't see him until early 2026. Derek Lively is week to week, and Daniel Gafford has been in and out of the lineup. At one point, got so bad, the Mavs only dressed 8 players, which is the bare minimum of players you need for an NBA game. Nico Harrison got so desperate that he urged AD to push himself to get back into the lineup despite the calf injury and issues with both of his Achilles. but thankfully medical staff were able to intervene as there was severe risk of Anthony Davis potentially tearing one of his Achilles tendons. Nico Harrison has dismantled a team that has made the NBA Finals just 18 months ago. And since that very trade, the Mavs have gone 16-28 as the top player that they got in return for Luka has proven to be damaged goods, as Davis has missed several games due to various injuries. Nico's roster moves were supposed to transform the team's identity, being a defensive-minded team, but they currently rank 29th in defensive efficiency, the one thing Harrison assured that this team would be elite at. He lost the fan base and was under constant fire as the Fire Nico chants got so loud that the Mavs had to boost Nico's security intel. Coming into the season, the Mavs had a sellout streak of over 24 years, but that finally came to an end in early November as this finally forced Patrick Dumont to see where changes needed to be made. As many season ticket holders discontinued their membership, as ownership finally realized the economic repercussions of this terrible move, as ticket sales also took a dip, and this being a complete PR nightmare, Dumont had no choice. What finally may have gotten Nico fired was a teenager. A kid named Nicholas Dickerson is the son of a Mavs season ticket holder, and one of the games early and in the season opener, as Patrick Dumont was taking a seat, Dickerson flipped him the bird. His dad was not happy about Dickerson's actions, so he demanded that his son apologize to the Mavs governor. The next time that Dumont attended a game, Dickerson went over and asked if they could chat, and he had an amicable conversation just talking basketball, and he did this while wearing a Lakers Luka Doncic jersey. In that conversation, Dumont allegedly took accountability and admitted that the Luka Doncic trade was indeed a huge mistake. The trade wasn't in the best interest of the franchise, and he's working to rectify it, while also trying to win back the fan base. And by the next morning, Nico Harrison was fired. I think what really caused Nico's downfall was his arrogance. He was being reactive instead of planning for the future for the better of the Dallas Mavericks. Towards the end of last season, the Mavs were trying to do damage control, but things got weird in a media session behind closed doors where there was no video, no audio recordings allowed. And in that session, he reiterated defense wins championships to even the most basic of questions. At the end of season presser, he was asked why he shouldn't be fired. He responded that he couldn't be judged because of all the injuries the Mavs have sustained at the end of the season, and that once these guys return healthy, that the Mavs would be competing for championships. Mind you, earlier in his tenure, Nico fired longtime athletic trainer Casey Smith, who at the time was attending to his dying mother. Ever since Smith's dismissal, the Mavs have faced a spike in injuries, hiring and firing 2 more athletic trainers since Smith's dismissal. Fast forward, they're in the middle of a 3-9 start at the bottom of the Western Conference with one of the worst offenses in recent NBA history, specifically the 29th ranked offense in terms of offensive efficiency. And like I said earlier, they rank dead last in points per game. The saving grace for the Dallas Mavericks is Cooper Flagg. Whoever takes over the Dallas Mavericks front office role, their primary goal has to be focused on building around Flagg and continue his development. Even if it means trading AD or Kyrie Irving for pennies on the dollar, it's in everyone's best interest to look to the future. For a team just 2 seasons ago was in the NBA Finals to now blowing it all up is a devastating reality for Mavs fans to deal with. At the end of the day, Nico's lasting legacy will be executing one of the worst trades in NBA history and gutting a roster that made the NBA Finals just 18 months ago. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What's next for the Mavs? What moves would you like to see the Mavs make? Mavs fans, are you finally happy? Time will tell if the Mavs move on from one of the darkest periods in franchise history, but this is certainly a step in the right direction. For now, we'll just have to sit back and be a spectator.